Hi everyone. In this class, let us discuss about the rate equations. We'll begin with the rate equation for conduction heat transfer rate. This is proposed by Joseph Fourier, a French scientist in 1822. So it's named as Fourier law of heat conduction. This law states that the conduction heat transfer rate in any system is directly proportional to number 1, the temperature gradient along the direction of heat transfer. Number 2, the area of a surface perpendicular to the direction of heat transfer. Mathematically speaking, the conduction heat transfer rate is proportional to del T by del X if at all we are interested in X conduction, and directly proportional to the area which is normal to the direction of X. And when we combine both these, we are going to get Q proportional to A delta T by delta X. Now we can introduce a proportionality constant, resulting in the mathematical statement of Fourier law of heat conduction. And in this equation, Q represents the conduction heat transfer rate along X direction in watts, and A represents the area of a surface which is normal to the X direction in meters square, and del T by del X stands for the temperature gradient along X direction in degrees centigrade per meter or Kelvin per meter. Then K stands for a proportionality constant known as thermal conductivity of the material in watts per meter degree centigrade or watts per meter Kelvin, depending upon the units we take for the temperature gradient. Then negative sign accounts for the direction of heat transfer, which is always from high temperature regions to low temperature regions. In other words, negative sign accounts for the second law of thermodynamics, as per which heat transfer should always take place from source to sink. Mathematically speaking, in this equation, K is always positive and so is A, but del T by del X is always negative, because along X direction, as X is increased, temperature has to decrease, and in the decreasing temperature direction, Q has to be positive. So to make Q positive in the decreasing temperature direction, we introduce the negative sign. So this equation can be used to estimate the heat transfer rate. And whenever area is not available, we calculate something called heat flux, which represents the heat transfer rate per unit area. As a matter of fact, in many practical applications, area may not be given, so take it as 1 meter square. At the end, we multiply with the total area available. Now let us see a simple application of Fourier law of heat conduction. Let us consider a plane wall of 12 centimeters thickness by 100, that is 0.12 meters thickness, of some area 0.6 meters square, made up of some material having thermal conductivity 17.6, and we assume that left side surface is at 90, right side surface is at 20 degrees centigrade. Then we calculate del T by del X as temperature at right side surface minus temperature at the left side surface by the thickness of the wall. This is going to be negative minus 103.333 degrees centigrade per meter. You can see that temperature gradient is always negative for Q is to be positive along X direction. And when we substitute this data in the Fourier law of heat conduction, we get Q as 6160 watts, provided temperature is a function of only X, that is one-dimensional steady-state heat conduction. Now let us dwell over some time to understand the physical significance of thermal conductivity. First and foremost thing is that thermal conductivity is a material property, and its value for all the important materials is available in standard data books. Name any material, K value will be available. Material could be in industrial applications or domestic applications, commercial material, doesn't matter. So name the material, K will be available. And further, the value of K represents the ability of a material to conduct heat through it. Higher the value of thermal conductivity, more is the heat conduction, and vice versa. And materials with the higher value of thermal conductivity are known as conductors, and those with lower value of thermal conductivity are known as insulators. And conductors are used for conducting heat, insulators are used for prohibiting heat. And the best example for conductor is copper, and best example for your insulator may be wool. So wool has got very low value of K. And in general, thermal conductivity is going to be tremendous for pure metals, followed by metallic alloys, then non-metals, then liquids, then insulators, and it's going to be extremely small for gases. And this is the gist of thermal conductivity values for some of the important materials at room temperature. First column you got serial number, then material, then thermal conductivity values. And you can see that among all these materials given in this table, silver has got very high value of K, and here you can see extremely small value of K, just 0.026. In the middle you have got so many other materials whose thermal conductivities are tabulated. And thermal conductivity may not vary with pressure, but it's a very sensitive function of temperature. Mathematically, K is independent of P, but it's a function of T. And how temperature is going to affect thermal conductivity depends upon the given material. If you look at conductors, it decreases with an increase in temperature. In insulators, it's going to increase with an increase in temperature. And in liquids, it's going to decrease with an increase in temperature. And in all the gases, it's going to increase with an increase in temperature. So this is how the temperature is going to affect the thermal conductivity of all the materials that we come across in our day-to-day applications. Then within a small range of temperatures, K can be taken as a constant as mentioned in this particular table. Then in the material selection for heat transfer equipment, the value of thermal conductivity becomes very important. For example, we want to select the material for connecting rod of a diesel engine. And connecting rod is going to be subjected to tremendous heat loads. Then how the material has to handle these high temperatures depends upon so many other parameters, so many other properties, in addition to the most important thermal conductivity. So these are some of the important remarks about your thermal conductivity. Then let us see the rate equation for convection. Before doing so, let's try to understand that convection takes place when a surface at some temperature is subjected to a fluid at some other temperature. When I say a fluid, it is something which is capable of flowing. When I say a fluid, it undergoes a deformation when it is subjected to a shear stress. And depending upon how the fluid flow is created, one can have three different types of convections. First is forced convection, in which the fluid flow takes place because of pressure gradients. In other words, in forced convection, the fluid flow takes place because of an external agency like a fan or a blower or a pump. So you are going to have high pressure at the upstream and low pressure at the downstream, and this pressure difference is the reason for the fluid flow. Then free convection or natural convection, in which the fluid flow takes place because of density gradients. So temperature at the surface is high, therefore the fluid is going to be lighter, low density, and temperature far away from the surface is going to be low, therefore fluid is going to be heavy, more density. So density gradients are created within the system, resulting in natural convection. Then in some cases we may have a combination of both pressure and density gradients. That type of convection we call it as mixed convection. So in many mechanical applications, we come across forced convection, sometimes free convection. Very rarely we do have mixed convection problems. And doesn't matter what the method of convection we have, Newton's law of cooling is the rate equation for convection. This law has been proposed by the great Isaac Newton in 1701. This law states that the convective heat transfer rate is directly proportional to number 1, area of the surface, and number 2, the temperature difference between the surface and the fluid. Mathematically speaking, Q is proportional to A and Q is proportional to Ts minus Tf. And if you combine both of them and introduce a proportionality constant, Q becomes HA Ts minus Tf, where Q represents forced, free or mixed convective heat transfer rate in watts, and H stands for forced, free or mixed convective heat transfer coefficient in watts per meter square Kelvin or watts per meter square degree centigrade. Then A represents the surface area in meter square. Ts represents the surface temperature in Kelvin or in degree centigrade. Tf stands for fluid temperature in Kelvin or degree centigrade. It may be noted that when temperatures are taken in Kelvin, H will assume the units of watts per meter square Kelvin, and when temperatures are taken in degree centigrade, H will have the units of watts per meter square degree centigrade. And remember, when we talk about temperature, it matters whether you have it in degree Kelvin or degree centigrade, because Kelvin is equal to degree centigrade plus 273. But when we talk about the temperature difference, it doesn't matter whether it is in Kelvin or in degree centigrade, both of them will be same. Therefore, since we talk about temperature difference, it does not matter whether you express the temperatures in Kelvin or in degree centigrade. And whenever area is not given, it's a customary practice to have it as 1 meter square. Then we calculate something called convective heat flux, which is simply equal to Q prime, that is Q by A, which is equal to H times Ts minus Tf. So this is the standard practice we do when area is not available. Then some remarks about convective heat transfer coefficient. First and foremost thing is that it's not a property but a complex parameter. Since it's not a property, its value cannot be found directly from any source. Thermal conductivity is a property, but H is not a property. That makes convection much more formidable than conduction. And the value of H depends upon number of parameters such as type of convection, forced, free or mixed, type of fluid, which may be a gas, which may be a liquid, which may be a powder, anything. The nature of fluid flow, here plenty of fluid mechanics comes into picture. Fluid flow could be laminar or turbulent. Fluid flow could be one-dimensional, two-dimensional or three-dimensional. Fluid flow could be incompressible or compressible. Like that, plenty of fluid mechanics plunges into action over here. Then nature of geometry over which convection is taking place. We may have a simple plate, we may have a cylinder, we may have a sphere, we may have a duct of different shapes and so on. Then in general it's going to be tremendous for condensing vapors, followed by boiling liquids, then liquids undergoing forced convection, then liquids undergoing free convection, then gases in forced convection. It's going to be extremely small for gases in free convection. And this table illustrates the typical range of convective heat transfer coefficients for various flow configurations in the ascending order. When you have a gas in free convection, H value may vary from 6 to 30. When the same gas is flowing, H may be as much as 30 to 300. When you have a liquid in free convection, it may be 60 to 1800. When same liquid is set to flow, it may be 300 to 18,000. And when you have boiling water, it may be anywhere from 3,000 to 60,000. Lastly, when you have condensing steam, it may be anywhere from 6,000 to more than a lakh, 1,20,000. So they are the typical range of H values for various flow configurations. And its evaluation would be the main emphasis of any convection analysis. So our main aim is to get H using different procedures which will be ventilated when we talk about convection. Now let us switch over to rate equation for radiation. And radiation heat transfer takes place without the aid of any material medium. It can occur even in perfect vacuum. And radiation becomes very prominent when you have any medium at elevated temperatures, at any temperature when there is nothing. So these two are the important aspects we need to consider. And this rate equation is given by Stefan Boltzmann law. Stephen has demonstrated this law experimentally in 1879, and Boltzmann has derived this law theoretically 3 years later in 1884, 5 years later. And this law states that radiation heat transfer rate from an ideal black body is directly proportional to number 1 fourth power of the absolute temperature of the black body, and number 2 surface area of the black body. Remember, ideal black body concept we'll discuss at the time of radiation, but right now you may note that when it's an ideal black body, it's a perfect radiator of any type of electromagnetic radiation. This we'll discuss later. And mathematically, Stephen Boltzmann law can be expressed as Q is proportional to T power 4 and Q is proportional to A, and we can combine this as Q is proportional to A T power 4, and we can introduce a proportionality constant sigma to have Q as sigma A T power 4, where Q is the radiation heat transfer rate in watts, T is the absolute temperature of the black body in Kelvin. There is no other go. Temperature has to be in Kelvin. And A must be the surface area in meter square. And sigma represents Stephen Boltzmann constant, having the units of watts per meter square Kelvin power 4. Since it's a constant in SI system, its value is 5.67, 10 power minus 8 watts per meter square Kelvin power 4. And this figure illustrates how the radiation is taking place in the form of electromagnetic waves. So we have a black body of area A, temperature T. It's going to radiate energy in all the 360 degrees as per this particular law. And whenever area is not given, we calculate radiation heat flux. And we get a feeling that in this equation there is nothing that is critical. Sigma is a constant. Area may be given, may not be given. If it's given, go for rate equation. If it's not given, go for flux equation. And temperature would be given. At the most, temperature may be given in degrees centigrade. Have it in Kelvin by adding 273. Therefore, we may get an intuition that radiation is easier than the preceding modes of heat transfer. But truly speaking, we require this equation, Stephen Boltzmann law, in a different format as mentioned over here. This is the practical problems we are going to have in radiation. So we are going to have two systems of areas A1 and A2, temperatures T1 and T2, colors C1 and C2. And the system 1, because of its temperature T1, area A1 will be able to emit radiation in all the directions, out of which only a part of it will be able to reach to, that is Q12. At the same time, system 2 has its own potential of radiating energy. Out of all that, only a part of it will go to 2, that is Q21. Unlike conduction and convection, wherein heat transfer will be unilateral from high temperature to low temperature, in radiation we are going to have it in both the directions. Hot system is radiating heat and cold system is also radiating heat. We'll be calculating something called net heat transfer rate, which will be energy emitted by 1 received by 2 minus energy emitted by 2 and received by 1. And we may have Q12 greater than Q21 if T1 is greater than T2. That's what exactly we assume. We assume this is hot, this is cold. If at all you have T1 less than T2, Q12 will be less than Q21. Net heat transfer rate will occur from 2 to 1. If T1 is equal to T2, they will be equal and opposite. Therefore, net heat transfer rate will be 0. Therefore, radiation is a very typical mode of heat transfer wherein both the surfaces are radiating heat. And the net radiation heat transfer rate is given by Q is equal to sigma A1 epsilon 1 F12 T1 power 4 minus T2 power 4. Where sigma is Stephen Boltzmann constant, we know it very well, 5.67 10 power minus 8 watts per meter square Kelvin power 4. A1 is the area of the hot surface, T1 is absolute temperature of the hot surface, T2 absolute temperature of the cold surface. Now we are left with two complex parameters. One is epsilon 1, other is F12 as shaded over here. Epsilon 1 represents color factor of surface 1. Under some special conditions, we may call it as emissivity. And F12 represents the shape factor of 1 with respect to 2. So color factor takes care of the color of the surface, non-blockness of the surface. In addition, color factor accounts for how much fraction of the energy the given surface can emit compared to the block body. So over here, this emissivity represents, epsilon 1 represents the quantification of the color. That's going to be a very big challenge, because color is something which is abstract, which we observe. But as far as radiation is concerned, we need to quantify the color. Then F12, the shape factor of 1 with respect to 2, indicates how much part of the total energy from 1 is able to reach 2. You can see this 1 is emitting radiation in all the directions. How much is reaching 2? That's important. Is it 10%? Is it 15%? Is it 8%? And these two parameters are very, very important in radiation analysis. And you may note that both color factor and shape factor are so complex that radiation analysis is very, very challenging. And to some extent in the laboratory, by crude methods, color factor can be estimated. But estimation of shape factor is a very big challenge. And for some simple geometries, shape factors have been found using some shape factor algebra or other approximate methods, and the results are available in standard data books. And at the time of radiation, we will see how to estimate the shape factor. And evaluation of shape factor is a major challenge in any radiation analysis. And over here we have a simple problem involving only one surface. That is, we have a block sphere of 50 mm diameter at 600 degrees centigrade. Find the radiation heat transfer rate in watts. So sphere diameter is given, its temperature is given. Diameter is given in mm, have it in meters. Temperature is given in degrees centigrade, have it in Kelvin. Then find the area of a sphere, pi d square, pi into 0.05 square. It's going to be 7.853 10 power minus 3 meters square. Then area is available, temperature is available, sigma is a constant. Substitute that over here. We get total energy emitted by this block sphere as 258.66 watts. And let us see some of the simple bits which have appeared in the previous papers, and also some general questions. In GATE 1990, about 30 years back, there was one more question like thermal conductivity is lowest for definitely air. For a given heat flow and for the same thickness, temperature drop across the material will be maximum for. So temperature drop is going to be maximum for the material having minimum thermal conductivity. Therefore, glass wool is the material having minimum thermal conductivity. It requires maximum temperature drop for the same heat transfer rate. Then in decrease in magnitude, the thermal conductivity of pure iron, liquid water, saturated water vapor, and pure aluminum can be arranged as. You can see out of these four materials, aluminum is the best, followed by iron, then water vapor. Therefore, the order should be D, A, B, C. That is option C is perfect. If you look at some general questions, in a furnace, following modes of heat transfer would be predominant. Furnace, you are going to have so many gases, convection becomes important. At elevated temperature, radiation becomes important. Fourier law is applicable to, definitely it's going to be conduction. And rate equation for convection is given by, it is option B, Newton's law of heat conduction. So this is something about the rate equations. So in the next session, we'll have some more aspects of heat transfer. So for the time being, bye bye, goodbye.